Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Good to see you again. Give me a couple of minutes just to share my screen. So I can just move things around a little bit. Okay, Hare Krishna. So let's offer some pranams to Srila Prabhupada before we begin. Namo Om Vishnu Vadaya Krishna Vastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Kauravani Pacharine Nivasesha Sunyavadi Pashtatar Satarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Kaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So welcome again, Hare Krishna. So last week we had a bit of internet problems, so we had to finish a little bit early, and we stopped at chapter 16. So I was thinking just to briefly go back to the beginning of chapter 16 and do a very brief review of the slides we covered and then continue. I think as far as I remember, we got up to about here, this slide here, or here. All right, but first of all, I'll ask a question because we're on chapter 16 today. Let's see what we cover today. As you know, we're only covering up to chapters 19. So, well, let's see what Krishna allows, because let's see what happens. We might finish, we definitely won't finish this week. And if we don't finish this week, then we're probably going to complete chapter 19 next week. But let's see how it goes. But I thought I'd begin with a question because we've been speaking about spontaneous devotional service, which began in chapter 15 and continues into 16. Chapter 17 is about Bhava and chapter 19 is about Prema. So I thought I'd just ask a question. Can anyone just give a little description of what is Raganuga Bhakti? You don't have to elaborate on the whole science of Raganuga Bhakti. That's a big topic, but just in essence, what is it?
So this is Hare Krishna Prabhu. So Raganuga Bhakti, which happens spontaneously, which happens, you don't have to go through the process, thinking about the process that it has to be done like, because the spiritual master has said so. So it comes out of your heart and you do it.
Yeah, that's a good kind of essence of it. It comes out of your heart and you do it. In other words, it's not based so much on vidhi. It's based more on rag or attraction. Yeah, that's good. Anybody else can offer a little description of Raganuga Bhakti, or not just its definition, but perhaps some of the details which we've been describing so far that you can remember. You can let me just. You can put something in the chat if you want, or you can just unmute and speak, or raise your hands and I'll call on your name. Just any more details about this Raganuga Bhakti?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Raganuga
Yes,
Bhakti.
please, move. Yeah, Hare Krishna. Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Basically, it follows from Vaidhi Bhakti when a devotee, serves the Lord with the rules and regulations, following a spiritual master's order. And during this process, when a devotee starts to get addicted to Krishna's services and to the Krishna himself, then he seems to be in the Raganuga Bhakti. when he's attracted to the Krishna's form and Krishna's services, and he's serving Krishna spontaneously without following the rules, like it comes automatically, basically.
Yeah, no, with that word automatic comes again. It's nice. And I think you was referring to attraction, meaning loba. One has agreed for this, agreed to hear about the devotional service rendered by the Ragatmaka Bhaktas, which is the perfected devotees in the spiritual world. Yeah, someone's put something in the chat. Let me just. Ragan, this is from Vrindavan Prabhu. Raganuga Bhakti is possible only if one comes out of anarthas. Yes, very good. Like material desires, lust, etc. Otherwise, there may be some devotion, but it will not be spontaneous devotion. Yeah, that's a stage that Rupa Goswami and Srila Prabhupada specifically give for being able to cultivate this spontaneous devotional service. It's anartha nivritti is done with. Yeah, that's a very important detail, which I think will come up again today. Let's perhaps one more. Anybody else can share something on this subject? Nayan has just put in a chat. Experience more bliss, less mechanical and enforced. Yeah, in essence, that's definitely there is happiness and there's bliss in any stage of devotion service, but it becomes more condensed at the higher stages of devotional service, and it's not mechanical, it's not enforced. Yeah, I think we've kind of, from hearing your responses, which are all very good, I think we've got the essence of it, which is very good. This subject is often misunderstood. There can be a bit of a mystery to devotees, but I think you've done well. You've kind of grabbed the essence of it. So let's just quickly, without having the same class we had last week, often when I do reviews, I kind of end up giving the same class. So let me try and be a little bit quick. So we went over this, the basic qualification for spontaneous devotional service is one is attracted, one hears about the resonance of Vrindavan, and there's an attraction there for that type of devotion. All right, I think we already just mentioned that. Very good. Achieving this qualification, we also mentioned it doesn't come cheaply. Eagerness is needed. That's known in Sanskrit as lobha, and it translated, it means intent covertedness, where in other words your overwhelming and sole desire is to please Krishna in a particular way. So that's why it cannot happen before anartha nivritti, because before anartha nivritti we have other desires in relationship to our body or in relationship to this material world. But the real qualification, or this was lobha, it's the meditation is quite intense because there is nothing else. There is no other distractions. One is not splayed out. Yeah. And Prabhupada, let's just mention this again because it's important. In Prabhupada's words on page 126, we must always remember, however, that such eagerness to follow in the footsteps of the denizens of Raj is not possible unless one is freed from material contamination. There is a stage called anartha nivritti, which means that the disappearance of all material contamination. Now, it's interesting, the stage of anartha nivritti, it doesn't mean you're liberated pure soul. That happens at bhava. But one's devotional activities are not impeded. One is, because after anartha nivritti comes nishta. One is fixed in the activities of bhakti, even though there may be some residue, or you could say, for one sense, the smell of your previous material desires may still be lingering around in your heart, in your subtle body, but it doesn't distract you from your devotional practice. You always chant your rounds, you always engage in your devotional service, etc. But anyway, here it is again. Prabhupada mentions it. It's not possible unless one is freed from material contamination. Okay, to be completely free of material contamination, that's called prema, and that's why prema manifests. One of the reasons. All right. So we mentioned this again. We're just going over last week before the internet. We had some problems. Raganuga, there's 3 stages of bhakti that Rupa Goswami categorizes. One is Vaidhi, one is Bhava, and one is Prema. Yeah. So Raganuga is Raganuga sudden. Yeah. So one is practicing. So in that sense, it's still sadhana, but it's a higher quality of sadhana than someone below the stage of anartha nivritti. That should be said. But because it's not bhava, it's not necessarily bhava or prema, it's still within the realm of sadhana. Okay? If you have any questions on this, please feel free to ask. You can raise your hand. And
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I got a question.
yes,
if I
please.
may. Thank you.
Prabhu. Yes, please.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, and Hare Krishna to everybody. Prabhuji, I wanted to ask you, like, when you take initiation, you know, it's Divya Gyan. So the spiritual master, there's a transmission from the spiritual master to the sadhaka. So same way, if someone is a Raganuga Radatmika Bhakta, because with this word that's come up quite often so far, spontaneous and spontaneously manifest. So if you were to approach a Raganuga Bhakta and they were pleased with you and your service, could they transmit that to you or not?
Yeah, that's given later how to achieve this stage. Or actually, that's in relation to the stage of bhava. Yeah, that's related to the stage of bhava. Yes, but we have to be qualified to receive it as well. Yeah, there's the qualification of the person who has it, but we also have we also have to be qualified to be able to recognize it, to be able to receive it, and to be able to act upon it.
Oh. So
Okay, we cannot just go. Yeah.
Sorry, Prabhuji, to cut you.
Right.
I was just saying. So it's two. Does that mean it's 2 things? It's spontaneous and it can be given.
Say it's spontaneous and it can be given. Well, it's by the blessings of the Vaishnavas that we obtain any stage in devotional service. So to obtain this, we definitely need the blessings of the advanced devotees all the way. So there's 2 things. There's our effort and there's the blessings as well. So our effort plays a part as well. Yeah. Our application of bhakti plays a part in getting blessings from the advanced devotees. Generally, the advanced devotees, although they feel compassion for everyone in general, but specifically for those who are sincerely practicing devotion and trying with utmost sincerity to follow the regulations of bhakti, they're going to invoke the heartfelt blessings of the advanced Vaishnavas and Krishna and the holy name. Yeah. So that answer your question? Basically, yes, but we have to be also qualified to receive it.
It does. Thank you very much, bro.
Yeah. All right. So therefore, we have to clean our act up so we can invoke that type of mercy. Yeah. So let's just get So now Rupa Goswami is going to this is where we left off last week, as far as I remember. Somewhere now, the actual practice of spontaneous devotional service. What is the actual practice? And so here, let's just read this verse here. This is quoted. This is quote from the Majja Leela. The devotee to you, perhaps a bit of a typo here, the devotee to you should always think of Krishna within himself. So this is the internal meditation of someone who's practicing Raganuga sadhana, always thinking of Krishna, and they will focus on a particular servitor of Krishna in the spiritual world, and they will have a particular, unless their regulated hearing will be quite focused. They will engage in topics about that particular devotee and their particular relationship with Krishna. And it's mentioned here, as we heard a few times now in the Nectar of Devotion, that in order to cultivate this, a good place to cultivate it is Vrindavan. Yeah. And then Prabhupada mentions here, however, this is Prabhupada actually. This verse is from Rupa Goswami, but Prabhupada adds this part here. Yeah. However, if one is unable to go to Vrindavan, he should mentally live there. At least I think it's Prabhupada has included it there. Yeah. So the first practice then of Raganuga Bhakti is meditation on the specific relationship with Krishna and his dear devotee. Yeah. So that meditation will be quite, in other words, one will hear about a particular mood. Yeah, all the residents in Vrindavan, they have a particular mood in their attraction to Krishna or Radharani. Yeah. And it's very unique. Like the mood of the cowherd boys is quite unique to them. And the mood of the gopis is also unique. Then the mood of the gopi assistants, the manjaris, is quite unique as well, has specific traits. And these moods, this is mentioned later on in the Nectar of Devotion. But this is the meditation of someone who's practicing Raganuga Bhakti. That's their attraction, and they like to hear about the specific moods of a specific devotee. So, for example, if one may be attracted with parental affection, one may meditate upon the service mood of Mother Yasoda. Now, this is quite a, as you can imagine, it's quite a, it's quite an advanced state or an advanced achievement. So it's not something we should go about on our own, because we might well make mistakes, or we might well be meditating on subjects perhaps we're not qualified for. So so basically what we're saying, this is all done under guidance of a senior advanced devotee who may give you guidance in this subject. All right, so just keep that in mind. But in essence, that's what it is. And Prabhupada, in the Nectar Devotion, he gives a nice description, or there is a description given, for example, of Mother Yasoda and how a Raganuga, one practicing Raganuga Bhakti would meditate upon Mother Yasoda. And it happens to be when Mother Yasoda, she's churning milk just before the Damodar Leela takes place. Yeah. There's a nice description of Mother Yasoda. She has flowers in her hair, and she's churning the milk, and some beads of sweat are falling. She has a beautiful sari, and that's, for example, will be the particular practice of a Raganuga Bhakta who's attracted to the mood of parental affection. Yeah. And Prabhupada mentions in page 126, when one is actually liberated from material contamination, he can always remember any internal devotee in Vrindavan in order to love Krishna in the same capacity and developing such an attitude, one will always live in Vrindavan, even within his mind. So we have a hands up from Dinesh and Pooja.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, yes.
Prabhu, my question is, this Mother Yashoda's love towards Krishna, or mother's love towards her son or child, is that more Raganuga Bhakti or it is more Prema Bhakti?
No, it can be in Raganuga Bhakti, it's practiced. One is not situated in their realized relationship with Krishna, but one has an attraction, yeah, and it'd be more general. So no, that's this can be practiced at the stage, not at prema, not even at bhava. And there's another verse, I think it's coming up, that even in the stage, where you're just, at least you're at the stage of nishta, one may be attracted to Krishna's pastimes and then meditate upon. So it's not the practice exclusive to bhava or prema. This is why it's interesting. It is actually a practice to an advanced sadhaka who's gone past the stage of anartha nivritti. So does that answer your question? So it's not exclusive just to bhava or prema, but at bhava and prema, it becomes more of a realized meditation.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, you follow? Actually, this will become more apparent as we go through today's class.
All right. So thank you.
And especially when we get to the next chapter. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Right? So the verse we just quoted, it mentions to always think about a devotee of, and this is the practice of a Raganuga Bhakta. Now this verse more elaborates on this point. Let's just read the verse here. The advanced devotee who is inclined to spontaneous love and service should follow the activities of a particular associate of Krishna in Vrindavan. He should execute service externally as a regulative devotee. So that answers that question we just had. So externally as a regulative devotee and internally from his self-realized position. Thus he should perform devotional service both externally and internally. Yeah. So so this just reminds me of, I think we mentioned it last time, that interesting point is that Rupa Goswami doesn't really elaborate so much on the external practice of Raganuga Bhakti, because it's not an external practice, it's an internal meditation. And this internal meditation is exhibited, or one continues doing all the, we mentioned the 64 angas of bhakti. One continues rendering devotional service in the same way, but the internal meditation and inspiration is different. That's why Rupa Goswami, we spent quite a few chapters describing the details of Vaidhi Bhakti, because when one attains the stage of Raganuga, those details don't change. So he's already described the external activities of a Raganuga devotee. It's everything we read about in relationship to Vaidhi Bhakti and the 64 angas of Bhakti. But the difference is internal. The difference is the meditation internally. So, okay. So, and also in this regard, Rupa Goswami and Srila Prabhupada mentions that that the residents say one is inspired by the service of Rupa Manjari. the Manjaris are assistants to the gopis. Yeah. Now, Rupa Manjari is the Siddha form. The Sadhak form of Rupa Manjari is Rupa Goswami. It's generally easy one to remember because it's the same name. It's not like that, the other Goswamis. So then one will follow the example of Rupa Goswami in their what's called Sadhak form. Yeah? A Sadhak form, Rupa Goswami has a Sadhak, or Rupa Manjari has a Sadhak form, which is Rupa Goswami. So then one will follow specifically Rupa Goswami. Yeah. Just read from here. For example, Srila Rupa Goswami simultaneously exists in Gaura Leela as a Sadhaka and in Krishna Leela as Rupa Manjari, Siddha. So it's Sadhak form and Siddha form. So there's two ways to meditate upon the residence of Raj. Externally and internally. Yeah? External, meditate on their sadhak activities as sadhaka, and internally on their activities as a siddha. Yeah, it's very interesting because the associates of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they are all siddha, they are all perfected souls, but they are playing the role of sadhakas, of those who are aspiring to obtain Krishna. So in other words, they're showing us how to, or they're showing us how to execute devotional service in the mood of aspiring for perfection. So did we understand that? Any questions about that? Is that kind of clear? There's external and internal. Yeah, no questions means of perhaps we've grasped it to some degree, as best as we can. Now this actually, I'm getting carried away here because there's a whole slide about it here. Okay, let's just, yeah. So let's just go over it again with a few more additional points. So Sadhaka Rupena is the word that Rupa Goswami instructs. So one should, in order, a Raganuga Bhakti will be absorbed in thoughts of a resident of Vrindavan. Yeah. Now, again, by following the activities of their sadhak form. And I know some devotees bring up, I know he's in Srila Shivaram Swami, in his writings on Raganuga Bhakti, he describes that as members of ISKCON, we are all meditating upon a siddha devotee in the spiritual world, and we're following his inspiration and example. Who is that? Who do we all follow in their sadhak form, who has the siddha form?
Srila Prabhupada.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Yeah, the next question will be, what's his siddha form? I won't offer any speculations on that. You can go on the internet, you'll find a few different speculations and views and thoughts on it. That's another subject which I'm not qualified to speak about, but we are following a resident of Vrindavan, or an eternal associate of the Lord, by following the teachings and meditating upon Srila Prabhupada. And for some realized souls, they will understand his siddha form. Yeah. But being chaste to Srila Prabhupada's mood, they are not going to reveal their jewels of realization on the internet. It's going to be an internal, I could say, jewel that they have. Anyway, point I'm making here is that we are meditating upon and following the footsteps of a resident of Vrindavan in the form of Srila Prabhupada. Yeah. So here's something from Srila Prabhupada from page 126. A devotee who is actually advancing Krishna consciousness, who is constantly engaged in devotional service, should not manifest himself even though he has attained perfection. He or she has attained perfection. The idea is that he or she should always continue to act as a neophyte devotee as long as his material body is there. Activities in devotional service on the regulative principles must be followed even by pure devotees. So Prabhupada, in this part here, where Rupa Goswami is speaking about external and internal, Prabhupada brings up this interesting point here, is that a devotee will not advertise themselves, even though they've attained a stage of perfection. So externally, in this context, Prabhupada is explaining this context, that externally, a devotee acts as a neophyte. Yeah. And how long does he do that? As long as the body's there. Yeah. So until death. Yeah. Again, this is an internal meditation. And then internally is the internal meditation of their relationship to Krishna. Yeah. Now, okay. So in other words, if anyone starts telling you that they're this and they're that, and they realize this, or you read something where so-and-so's realized this, Vipanuga, is that a hand up or finger? Yeah. Good job I can see your picture, because I can't see everyone's picture. But anyway, go ahead.
Is it part of, I mean, this maintaining this external practice, part of the maintaining the stage of humility?
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, that's actual humility. Very, very profound humility. Yeah. And that comes up. That's actually a real humility. I say real humility because there's practice humility as part of our sadhana. We practice being humble. But then there's the natural manifestation of humility that comes from reaching the stage of bhava. Yeah, it's just part of one's persona. It's not practiced, it's actually factual. And that's at the stage of bhava. But yeah, humility plays a big role in going through the different stages of devotion. It's something to be meditated upon, something to be developed, something to be practiced. Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Vipanuga, for mentioning that. Okay. So, so internally, slide's not moving. Oh, now it's moved. Okay. Right. So we've got 3 more slides to go in this chapter. Then we'll go to chapter 17. I think we've already mentioned this point. We've already covered it. The word Siddha Rupena, just reading here, instructs one to be absorbed in thoughts of an eternal resident of Vrindavan by internally, mentally following the behavior of their Siddha form. Yeah, we mentioned this. That's another quote from Prabhupada. But so Prabhupada gives a nice summary of what we're trying our best to explain. Prabhupada does it very nicely. But when he realizes his position in relationship to the Lord, he, along with discharging regulative service within himself, thinks of the Lord and develops his transcendental relationship following that associate. Yeah, so he continues with the discharge of regulative service as given by Rupa Goswami already, the 64 angas of bhakti. Yeah, but within himself, he's meditating upon the particular mood of a particular associate of Krishna. That's called Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. All right, and that's their inspiration, is that internal meditation. All right. Now we're going to speak about, some of you may have heard this word before. Prabhupada gives a warning here about a process called Siddhapanali. This was a process which had merit and practice generations and even in the time of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But actually, in this day and age, it's recommended not. It's not, because no one has the qualification for this, what's called Siddhapanali, either to give it or to receive it. So we'll explain what that is. Now, Prabhupada mentions that this misconception of Siddhapanali is based upon the slokas that have just been describing external and internal. Yeah. So the first deviation of these people who follow this is that they prematurely means before the stage of Anartha Nivritti. They imagine that they are in a specific spiritual form. Yeah. So they may not even have given up being able to control they may not even be free of lust, etc. But they take it as a bona fide sadhana, even at the stage of material contamination, that they imagine a specific spiritual form. Okay, now that specific spiritual form and meditation will supposedly be given by a guru who will assign that person a particular meditation, as we've just described, but prematurely and artificially. Prabhupada writes, the deviants, they imagine they have become associates simply by thinking themselves like that. According to our acharyas, our Siddha Deha develops gradually when our hearts become purified. All right. I'll give you a more practical, basic example of what it looks like. Like when we take up Krishna consciousness, we are told, we read Srila Prabhupada's books, we attend the temple, we celebrate festivals, we engage in Harinam, we engage in spreading Krishna consciousness to the best of our ability. These are our general activities as sadhakas. Now, for some people, they will take up, they're taking up Krishna consciousness means, even at the stage of bondage, they're taken up means they will meditate right from the very beginning on a particular spiritual form that they don't have. Yeah. And so you can see the difference. And so they will, and for instance, they will be told to chant 64 rounds a day, even if they haven't given up smoking. And even they may be in an illicit relationship, they would take up the practice of chanting 64 rounds a day and meditate upon Krishna's unfolding pastimes throughout the day. So you can imagine how artificial it actually is. And without going into more sordid details, it leads to great degradation and embarrassment. So a second deviation is that, the word is used to follow the residence of Vrindavan. So they exclusively do that without following the sadhaka rupa form of the residents of Vrindavan, and without following their lifestyle and practice. They will exclusively follow the Siddha form to the extent that they will imitate the Siddha form by addressing, like, for example, gopis. So you may see, there's different types. There's if you're in Bombay or sorry, Mumbai now, if you're in Mumbai, and sometimes you see these eunuchs, men, but they don't have any genitals, and I won't go into detail, and they dress like women. They have earrings and they have lipstick, and they look pretty gross. And they come knocking on the car window, begging for donations, and they go to the shops, and there's a whole suspicion around them that if you don't give them donations, they're going to curse you. Yeah, some of you may have seen that in India. But then if you go to Vrindavan, you're going to see these persons who are following so-called the Siddha form, say, or they're Siddha, like Rupa Manjari, so then they will dress like gopis. And that's part of their cultivation. So that's their so-called sadhana. Did you follow here what's going? So in other words, if you follow Rupa Manjari, you're going to follow Rupa Goswami. And Rupa Goswami is laying out the activities of a bhakta here, of the 64 angas. But they just, anyway, that's no need to say anymore. I think we get the idea. Is there any questions on this or anything else?
So, Prabhu, can we say
So,
that?
for instance,
Oh, sorry, Prabhuji. Can we say that it's bona fide, but the point is that no one's like qualified to do it. Therefore, it's recommended to us not to do it.
No, yeah, you could say that. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur did not recommend it for obvious reasons, because it's subject to degradation, as we just explained. Yeah, it's subject to degradation, and no one is. You have to be at least. I mean, these people take up this practice, while they're before the stage of Anartha Nivritti, and even at the stage of Anartha Nivritti, it's not a recommended practice. We have to follow. That's why the important point. We have to follow the external activities of Rupa Goswami and Srila Prabhupada. Yeah, like for instance, they will not follow Ekadashi because in Vrindavan they do not follow Ekadashi. Yeah, for example, and there's a whole history about that. But people okay. Now that's about Siddha Pranali. So in other words, they wrongly interpret that we should imitate the gopis both externally and internally. Yeah. So then you're going to see them dressed in saris, and also it says here that they won't worship the guru. Even there'll be no Guru Pad Ashraya. Yeah. Anyway, as Prabhupada says, no need to mention these persons any further. Now, so in other words, what's being said here as well is that Raganuga sadhana doesn't mean a rejection of Vaidhi. Yeah, we still follow all the activities of someone will still follow all the activities of Vaidhi, but there will be more focused concentration on particular aspects that's conducive to the particular devotee who they're inspired by in the spiritual world. Yeah. So they may continue to worship the deity, but their internal mood will be conducive for that devotion or for that meditation or that attraction. Yeah, there's a few. Okay, this comes up later. There's a note I think it comes up later. I just mentioned it here. Rupa Goswami gives an illustration of this, of an elderly person who developed an aspiration to love Krishna in a parental mood. Yeah. So Narada Muni gave him a sadhana of worshipping the deity as his son, following the footsteps of Nanda Maharaj. So he was given a Raganuga sadhana. Yeah. So let's hear from Prabhupada. Learned Acharyas recommend that we follow the regulative principles even after the development of spontaneous love for Krishna. One should specifically engage himself in a type of devotional service which he has a natural aptitude. In this way, everyone should act according to his particular taste. Yeah. And just a few additional points here. Speaking about the, specifically here, again, bringing up this point of karma, ruga, karmanuga, excuse me, and some bandha ruga. There's two types we've mentioned. One is the love exhibited by the gopis, and the other one is the love exhibited by Krishna's friends, servants, and parents, and we've described that. Okay. Now, this Kama Ruga is divided into two. There's two subdivisions of this, and this is the mood of the gopis and the mood of the queens in Dwarka. Yeah. As you know, the mood of the queens in Dwarka is, you could say, tinged with, or it's mentioned they have, they worship Krishna with a sense of awe and reverence as well, which is absent in the mood of the gopis. Yeah. So there's two additional subdivisions of Kama Ruga. Okay. I should have put this on the slide as well, but you know, it's a two edition now. Now there's two further divisions of Kama Ruga. Okay, you don't have to memorize these Sanskrit terms, but one is Sambhoga Icha Mayi. So that means that they strive to serve Krishna by personally, in other words, they striving to serve Krishna as those who meet him personally. Yeah. Now, in the spiritual realm, there is thousands, or there's millions, there's an unlimited amount of gopis, but not all of them will have a personal interaction with Krishna. Some will. For example, Radharani, one of her Manjari assistants, is Rati Manjari, as though she has some little personal relationship with Krishna. Her whole life and her whole meditation is arranging for Radharani to meet Krishna. You follow? Now, one mood is to desire that personal conjugal, say in relationship to conjugal rasa, they want to relate to Krishna in that way, personally. Now, tat tat bhava ich chamayi, each atma, tat tat bhava each atma. Again, don't worry, you won't be asked these Sanskrit terms. So the other one I just mentioned, striving not to meet Krishna directly, but to assist the Supreme Heroine Srimati Radharani, and thus directly experience her loving mood through the service and appreciation. And it's actually described that these assistants to Radharani, they experience, even sometimes it's described, a bliss more than what Radharani does. That's perhaps difficult to try and explain, but they actually, from that, they experience such a joy that when Radharani finally meets with Krishna after, say, some time of separation, for one reason or another, that when Radharani finally for instance, breaks her man, or she finally meets with Krishna. And these manjaris are so overwhelmed with happiness. Yeah, because that's their happiness is Radha's meeting Krishna. Their happiness is not them meeting Krishna. Their happiness is in Radha's meeting Krishna. Or their happiness is in Chandravali meeting Krishna. Yeah. So these two subdivisions there. All right. Did you get that? These two subdivisions, to personally exchange with Krishna, or to be an assistant to someone who is personally exchanging with Krishna. And interesting here, Prabhupada describes, he gives a sadhana of how one becomes eligible for this karma rugas sadhana. And he says one achieves this mainly by worshipping Radha and Krishna deities. Yeah, by worshipping deities of Radha and Krishna, and hearing about their pastimes with the gopis. Yeah, so the devotee will then, again, it's an internal meditation, but they will worship Radha Krishna, and this gives them qualification. This helps them in their Raganuga meditation, and they will hear about the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. Yeah? And he says, one achieves this mainly by worshipping deities of Radha and Krishna. Interesting, isn't it? Mainly, they achieve this by worshipping deities. Well, it doesn't sound so surprising because he's worshipping Radha and Krishna. Yeah, and there's a relationship between Radha and Krishna, and it's conjugal, it's kama rupa. Okay, let's read again from Prabhupada directly. The development of conjugal love can be possible only by those who are already engaged in following the regulative principles of devotional service, specifically worshipping deities of Radha and Krishna in the temple. Such devotees gradually develop spontaneous love for the deity, and by hearing the Lord's exchanges of loving affairs with the gopis, they gradually become attracted to those pastimes. The Prabhupada mentions that on page 128. Yeah. Now then there's a section, again, if you have any questions on this, you can ask.
Yes, Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Please, yes. Who's this speaking? That's
Bridge, yes, Prabhu.
Bridge, yes, Hare Krishna Bridge.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. So, Radha and Krishna deities, which is fantastic, I understand that. But in Vrindavan, there are some temples like Radha Raman temple, Kunj Bihari temple. Is there only single deity and not Radha and Krishna deities? So how does it relate to that?
I don't know. Yeah, Radha Raman. I mean, there is a representative of Radharani there in Radha Raman temple. And then what's the other deity you mentioned?
Kunj Bihari, Banke Bihari temple.
Yeah, Banka Bihari. Yeah, actually, just before I was going to ask, as I was asking the questions, I was just going to say, please don't ask me a question which I don't know about. But unless anyone can offer any explanation on this, but this is the recommendation to meditate upon Radha and Krishna. What comes to mind is, for instance, Radha Raman. I mean, the word is Radha Raman. Radha Raman. So, and Radharani is represented there. So it could be that without, perhaps need some clarification, but to worship Krishna means Krishna is devoted to Radharani. So they're not just meditate upon Krishna exclusively. The meditation on Krishna automatically will develop into the meditation of Krishna's rasa, which primarily is shown to the highest degree in the form of the gopis and Radharani. So that's as much as I can say on that. Even though Krishna is just there as the deity, the meditation is it's understood that Krishna does have relationships. And
sure.
Anyone else could add to that or anything else? Perhaps you could, Bridgewater, you could perhaps do a bit of homework. You could ask some advanced devotees, ask some senior devotees this question. Prabhupada says in the Nectar of Devotion that this mood of Raganuga in the conjugal mood is primarily developed by worshipping Radha and Krishna deities. What about deities where, like in Vrindavan, where Krishna is not accompanied by Radha? Is this still a recommended sadhana, Raganuga sadhana? Quite an elevated question for developing this mood.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. So I also mentioned here is Rupa Goswami's bring up a misconception, which he does many times in the Nectar of Devotion. I mean, the whole Nectar of Devotion is to dispel misconceptions, to actually explain what is pure devotional service. And so he's making it very clear. Yeah, so there is no misconceptions of what pure devotional service is. Another misconception here brings up here is that to develop the mood of conjugal love for Krishna, it cannot be done in a male body. It can only be done in a female body, which has those kind of material sentiments. So that's a misconception. And Srila Rupa Goswami specifically gives the sages at Dandakaranya forest. Now they was chanting the Gopal mantra. And if I've got the Leela correct, I'm thinking of the right forest, is they were meditated upon the Gopal mantra, and when they saw Ram, who's the Lord himself, who is Krishna, they spontaneously became attracted to Ram in the mood that he was Krishna, because it was Krishna. And they asked to enter, they requested for achievement of their Raganuga son being attracted to Ram, but in the mood that he was Krishna. So they were attracted in a conjugal way. So then Ram gave them blessings. Yes, in the future when I appear as Krishna, you will take birth as gopis. So that love or that mood developed in them in malforms. Okay, so that's a misconception. Yeah, the material body has nothing to do with our eternal actual relationship with Krishna. And we've been, those who are in male bodies, they've had millions of female bodies in a previous life. And those in female bodies, you probably had millions of male bodies in different species of life. It has no relevance to our eternal relationship to Krishna. This is an internal spiritual development, which has nothing to do with this body, either male or female. So this relationship with Krishna can be can be realized in the male form. All right.
Prabhuji, one question I'd like to ask is that our 6 Goswamis are in their Siddha forms are all Manjaris. So does that mean that they don't directly meet with Krishna, but they assist Radharani to meet with Krishna?
Yep. Got it. Now they may meet with Krishna while they're serving Radharani. Yeah, of course they do. Some of them, they will see Krishna. They will pass messages to Krishna on behalf of the gopis. They will, for instance, they will be there Radharani, and they will be assisting the gopis in their service to Radha and Krishna, and Radha and Krishna are there. You understand? So for instance, not as if the Manjaris, the Manjaris, they never ever see Krishna, but they do. But their main meditation is Radha's service to Krishna. They're Radha. And their life is completely absorbed in Radha. They would die for Radha. That's their, and for some other devotees in Vrindavan, Krishna is everything for them. It's Krishna. For others, it's Radha. And incidentally, Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya mainly is following this mood of Manjari Bhav. Okay, that's a difficult topic. Yeah. Okay, so did that answer the question? Yeah, so it doesn't mean they don't meet Krishna, but they're more concerned about, and they more want to serve Radha and the other gopis, not just Radha. As I mentioned, Chandravali, she has assistants as well, Padma and others. So their life and soul is, or their goal of their life is that Chandravali meets with Krishna.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you, Prabhu. Appreciate it.
Hare Krishna. So, yeah. Another point here that's mentioned. Rupa Goswami gives another warning here. Danger of aspiring a direct relationship, say, for instance, in parenthood. In other words, one cannot, in this meditation of sudden, this Raganuga sudden, meditation should not be and cannot be that you're going to be or Nanda Maharaj or Mother Yasoda. No. Sorry, position taken. Yeah. And Prabhupada, interestingly, that Rupa Goswami and Prabhupada, is that they mention that this is akin to Mayavad philosophy, to become one with Krishna. So that's given as another warning as well, a warning or maybe misconception. All right. And then Prabhupada finishes this chapter here. He mentions that some people, the Vallabha, you see there in the last part, I think the last paragraph, the Vallabha Sampradaya used the term Pushtimag to indicate Raganuga. Yeah, this process of devotion service is sometimes called Pushtimag. Yeah, Pushtimag actually means this Raganuga sub. So he mentions that at the end there. All right, so that's chapter 16. Do you want to hear more? Chapter 17? Say yes.
Haribol.
Yes.
Yeah.
Haribol. Haribol. Okay, let me press a few buttons. Okay. Okay, so well done, everyone. You're now going to come to the stage of Bhava. Okay, Haribol. So now we're going to speak about Bhava. You've done very well. You've gone through the stage of Vaidhi. And Rupa Goswami has introduced you to Raganuga Bhakti, and now you've come to Bhava. Okay. I don't mean that. I think you know what I mean here. Yeah, we speak about Bhava now. So it's chapter 17, ecstatic love, Bhava. I think I mentioned last week, whenever you see the word ecstatic love in Prabhupada's books, he's referring, generally, it's always referring to a specific stage of love, which is Bhava. Yeah. So the reason why we do sadhana is to awaken Bhava. That's the goal of sadhana, and we should be very clear on that. Yeah. Sadhana, there's 3 stages: sadhana, bhava, and prema. So progression in sadhana means attaining the stage of bhava. That's what sadhana is for. And that's a definition of sadhana that's actually given as well, which I think a definition comes up in one of these slides. Yeah. So, and Prabhupada mentions on page 131 in chapter 17. In the previous chapters, the symptoms of devotional service were explained along with instructions of how we may execute devotional service with our present senses, Vaidhi, and gradually rise to the platform of ecstasy in spontaneous love. All right. So in other words, so Bhava is the sadhya, is the goal of our sadhana. Yeah. And Prabhupada explains it as executive and effective. So the executive is the sadhana, and the effect of that practice is known, he calls it effective. Yeah. So he mentions there's two stages of regulative principles. Within the stage of the regulative principles of devotional service, there are two divisions: executive, vaidhi, and effective, bhava. All right. Now, yeah. Now, interesting. Damodar Swami very nicely helps us to understand this here. So sadhana, why is it called executive, not executive? Excuse me, executive, because it involves practice. So that practice, if it's done nicely, will have an effect. Yeah, that executive should lead to an effect. That effect of correct practice of sadhana is bhava. Yeah, and Prabhupada also says, I think we touched on it before as well, that sadhana or bhava is not prema. So bhava also, in one context, when keeping prema in mind, it's within the stage of regulative principles. Okay, but as I said before, it's considered to be a higher level of regulative practice than a sadhaka, than sadhana. Yeah. Okay. Again, if there are any questions on this, please feel free to ask. Okay, let me just read this note here as it goes into the next slide. The phrase regulative principles of devotional service, this is a translation of Chesta Rupa. Yeah. Okay. Prabhupada translates Rupa Goswami's Chesta Rupa as the phase of regulative principles of devotional service. Yeah. So and the next paragraph will explain it. Okay. So there's two divisions of pure devotional service. So, and here it's nice definition here. Devotional service executed with one's endeavors. Bhava Rupa is executed with one's emotions. So again, it's internal. The emotions are different, as we've explained, as we very nicely explained. We asked that question. It's more natural. Yeah. So Bhava Rupa. Okay. So Bhava Rupa is devotional service executed with one's emotions. It doesn't mean we don't have any emotion at sadhana. Okay. Doesn't mean we're just like robots at sadhana. In one sense, compared to Bhava, you could say we are. No, there's feeling and there's emotion there. Yeah, even at sadhana, there's different emotions and feelings there. But practically speaking, we're executing devotion with our senses. We're like doing things, you know. You're asked to clean the pots, and we're cleaning the pots. We're cooking prashadam. We're cleaning the temple, or we're making garlands, or we're polishing the cartels, or whatever we're doing. Now, Bhava Rupa is more the internal. It's more the emotions within. And we will experience these internal emotions even at the stage of sadhana, like a reflection of what's to come. Yeah, feelings of affection and love for the devotees or for Krishna by the mercy of Bhakti Devi. Anyway, I'm going off track here. Let's get back. Yeah. So within the stage of regulative principles of devotional service, there are two divisions: executive and effective. Here, executive endeavors that cause bhava, effective endeavors that result from bhava. Yeah. So endeavors that cause bhava is Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Sarvam Kirtana Vishnu Smarana Parasevanam, etc. And the endeavors that result from bhava is the mood. Now that's known, and then that starts, then Rupa Goswami, in chapter 20, he begins describing more this bhava rupa, because it has different manifestations, anubhava, sattvika bhava, vyapachari bhava, etc. And that's then described from chapters 20 onwards. All right. And these bhavas will be different according to particular relationship one has with Krishna. Like the anubhavas of the gopas will be different than the anubhavas of the gopis. Anyway, if you want to read more on that, that's chapter 20 onwards. So in brief, reading here now from Dhanodar Swami, in brief, anubhava, a little insight into it, is an endeavor that results from stimulation of one's affection for Krishna. So now it has an effect. For example, when a friend's love is stimulated, anubhava may be that he endeavors to play with Krishna. That's the manifestation of that bhava, anubhava. It manifests in particular relationship with Krishna. So the cowherd boy will be wrestling with Krishna, stealing his lunch, etc. All right. Now this is from Bhakti Vasmriti Sindhu, but Prabhupada is used by Krishna Kaviraj Goswami. Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami used it there in the Chaitanya Tamrita, taken from Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Vasmriti Sindhu. So definition and characteristics of bhava. Would someone else like to read? Perhaps I get other devotees to read. Perhaps as they say, I get tired of my own voice. Anyone like to read? Let's hear from some of you out there.
Definition characteristics. When devotional service is situated on the transcendental platform of pure goodness, it is like a ray of the sunlight of love for Krishna. At such a time, devotional service causes the heart to be softened by various tests, and it is called bhava, emotion.
Right. So there's a basic definition. That is not a basic; it's a complete definition of bhava. So you got that. It's like a ray, one ray of the sun of prema comes down and touches the heart of a devotee. Okay, that's the definition of bhava, and we'll expand upon that. Now, it has primary characteristics. Someone could read this as well. Someone else could read this.
I can read it.
Yes, please.
Okay. The primary characteristics. The primary characteristics of bhava is Suddha Sattva Visheshatma. It is the stage wherein Suddha Sattva enters the devotee's heart.
Yeah, remember we mentioned in regards to Anyabalata Sunyam, the Padibhasha Sutra, the most important main verse in the Nectar of Devotion. We spoke of primary characteristic and secondary characteristic. So here we're hearing the primary characteristic of bhava. It's when Suddha Sattva, the environment or the atmosphere of the spiritual realm enters the devotee's heart. It's not the mode of goodness. This is the Lord's internal potency. So the internal potency helps, it functions to revive one's dormant love for Krishna. Yeah. All right. So, as you know, if you picture a seed, it cannot grow without being touched by the sun, energy of heat and light. So in other words, we will have love of God because we're all eternal related with Krishna as his loving servants, but that is dormant at the moment. It's dormant in our heart. Yeah. So it cannot actually fructify actually without being touched by the Suddha Sattva. Yeah. The devotional energy. So it may come, as I think Nayan Prabhu, I think he answered a question which is in relationship to this. It come, where does it come from? How can it come? Why does it come? So one, it can come through the mercy of a pure devotee. It can come from the holy name. It can come directly from Krishna himself. But however it does come, what is coming is the internal potency of the Lord. Yeah. So in other words, when this Suddha Sattva touches the heart, it energizes the seed of our original love for Krishna, and that's when it's beginning to sprout. When it's touched, that's when the Bhakti Lada Beej begins to flower. This is Bhava when it grows. Before that, Vaidhi Sadhana, there's some leaves growing, and when it begins to flower, that is Bhava. It just opens. And when it opens fully, the big flower, the full flower, that's called Prema. And that's when Krishna comes directly, because he cannot resist the scent or the attraction, or he cannot resist that love of a devotee when he's completely flowered. Then Krishna comes directly and manifests himself, and thereby your relationship with Krishna, because Krishna cannot resist it. Yeah, that's the stage of Prema. So the stage of Bhava, it's just like Suddha Sattva comes and it's just budding. Yeah, it's just budding. Yeah. So it causes it to sprout. So this is the first sprout of Prema. So in one sense, Bhava is Prema, but it's the beginning stages of Prema. The first stage of Prema is Bhava. Yeah. That's why it said the word in Sanskrit is Prema Su Amsu. Prema Su Yamsu. Means it's a ray of the sun of Prema. One ray of the sun of Prema touches the devotee. And this is the stage where when this one ray of Prema touches the devotee, that they become liberated from the three modes of material nature and are considered to be liberated and untouched by the material energy. That's just one little ray of Prema. Yeah. You know, just like before day comes, then the sun is rising, and dawn is the onset of day. So the onset of Prema is the Bhava. Yeah. Now, once Bhava has arisen, it's quite, you could say, once Bhava has arisen, it's quite sure, or once the sun comes at dawn, it's quite sure you're going to see the sun in its full position. So the same with Bhava. Everything happens more quickly then, the stage of Bhava. Yeah. The Prema soon rises. Yeah. Is there any questions on this? You're free to ask. Just check the time. We'll stop for a break at 2 o'clock. So, okay, let's read further on. So someone else would like to read how Suddha Sattva descends. Some more details, breaking down into more details now. Someone could read this for us, someone who hasn't read.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So,
Hare Krishna, yes, Vrindavan. How do you do?
How should the sattva descends when the divine potency of cognition and affection, samvit and haladini, combines in the heart? One can begin to fully relish Krishna as the supreme object of love. This is Bhava Bhakti, the awakening of love of Godhead.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So here we go, more details here, like looking in a bit further. What's it consist of? Specifically, this Suddha Sattva consists of Samvit and Hladini. Yeah, so Samvit is the cognitive or knowledge-giving potency. Yeah, and Hladini is the pleasure or the devotional potency. Yeah, so in other words, when a devotee, when they have realizations or they experience bliss, they experience bliss because of a reason. Yeah, they experience bliss because they realize how kind Krishna is, how compassionate Krishna is. The Samvit has shown you or shown the devotee how beautiful Krishna is, how kind he is, how affectionate he is. That knowledge is the Samvit, and that automatically gives rise to devotion, pleasure. All right. So the Samvit and the Hladini work together. Yeah, you're not gonna. I mean, if devotee is feeling ecstasy, it's not okay. He or she may question why it comes to them and where it's come from, and they may not see themselves qualified. But the reason they're feeling ecstasy is because they realize something about Krishna or Krishna's devotees. Yeah, and they feel great ecstasy, and they feel that ecstasy is the devotional potency. Yeah. So in other words, when it's Samvit Shakti descends into the heart and empowers one to perceive and know Krishna. Other than that, it's closed doors. Yeah? And we read about it, and we read Krishna book and we read, but actually when you come to the stage of Bhava, then what you're reading becomes like the doors open and everything becomes like tangible, relishable for your spiritual senses. Yeah. Sounds a nice stage to reach, isn't it? Yes. Yes, that's our goal. We should know why we're doing sadhana, to come to Bhava. Yeah, we should be very clear. Yeah, and we should desire it. We should desire to advance, desire to come. We should desire to fall in love with Krishna. Yeah. So let me just read here. The Lord's devotional potency, Hladini, also descends into the devotee's heart, empowering one to fully manifest blissful love of Godhead. When the divine potencies of cognition and affection, Samvit and Hladini, combine in the heart, one can begin to fully relish Krishna as the object of love. Yeah, that's Bhava Bhakti, the awakening of love of Godhead. It's not the full manifestation, it's just a little awakening. But that's enough to cut your attachment to the material world completely. Now, that's the primary characteristics. The secondary characteristics that it gives someone like, oh, this is not a definition of the second characteristics, but we'll explain why this verse is here. But in the meantime, would anyone like to read this verse here?
Certainly, that heart is steel framed, which, in spite of one's chanting the holy name of the Lord with concentration, does not change when ecstasy takes place. Tears fill the eyes and the hairs stand on end. Yeah,
so we could say this is Bhava softens everything. Yeah, it gets through that steel cage, it penetrates that steel cage, yeah, and causes ecstasy. Yeah. So the second characteristic of Bhava is that it softens the heart. Yeah. And this, with a soft heart, one then experiences various tastes or rasa in relationship to Krishna. And there's a fascinating chapter in the Nectar of Devotion. The Rupa Goswami speaks about the different states of heart of a devotee, comparing them to ghee, honey, butter, yeah, different dispositions of a devotee, where some devotees are very grave in their disposition, and they're like deep as an ocean. So the emotions they experience will not necessarily manifest externally. Yeah. Other devotees, then they're compared to a puddle, in a sense that a little emotion will show, like a little stone in a puddle will show. And he gives another example of a cottage in a big or a big city. When he says a big city, then an elephant, say in an Indian city, there's not many elephants in London, but then may not be noticed. But when it's next to a cottage, then it's noticed. So anyway, without going too long down that line, Rupa Goswami elaborates on this here about emotion and how it manifests, in what way it manifests in different types of devotees. Yeah. Now, Prabhupada explains in this connection. Yeah, so anyway, I'm trying to figure out why I put this verse here. I've just managed to. So this is the opposite. A soft heart is one easily moved or changed by emotion, as opposed to that here is this here, a heart that's still framed. Yeah. And Prabhupada explains here, in this connection, there's a statement in the Tantras that ecstasy is the first symptom of pure love for the personality of Godhead. And in this stage, one is sometimes found shedding tears or shivering. Ashtasatvika bhava. Yeah, there's 8 manifestations which affect the physical body of a devotee. Yeah. And 2 of them is when the ecstasy, and Rupa Goswami explains this as well in latter chapters, when this mood or when this Ladini Shakti affects the water element within the body, then uncontrollable tears come. Yeah. And shivering. That's explained in latter chapters. I'll just come in the chat. Hare Krishna, can we please get updated handbook for Unit 6, as we don't seem to have these slides in the handbook? Yeah, Padmanabha Nityananda should have sent you to link to all these slides. They're actually all there, and I have all the slides, and I sent the link to actually get these slides. So he obviously hasn't sent that to you yet. So then I shall remind him after this, okay? All right, so they will be coming hopefully today. So, yeah. So let me just read here. So Prabhupada is defining the primary characteristics of bhava by saying that ecstasy is the first symptom of prema. The secondary symptom is that prema softens the heart, that one is to the extent that one is visibly moved by emotions. Okay. Now, this will then if I got it in the next slide here, yes. Now, this will then lead to different, what's described, tastes. It gives rise to different emotions. And Rupa Goswami gives 3 examples here. The desire to achieve Krishna, prapti, abhilas. The desire to please Krishna, anukulya, abhilas. And the desire to be close at heart with Krishna, Sohada abhilas. Yeah. All right, so that gives, this is the sky, as I mentioned, this is the mood, the internal mood of aspiration that the devotee has when they reach bhava. Yeah, this is 24 hours a day. These 3 various tastes described here. Yeah. Okay. It's 2 o'clock. My alarm just went off. Okay. So let's have a little pause here before we describe the nature of bhava. And so let's get together again at 15:15. That's okay with everyone? We'll give you 15 minutes, and then we should finish this chapter. Then we might even get to the next chapter. Let's see how it goes. Okay. Hare Krishna. If in the meantime, if anyone's got any questions, you can send it to me on the chat, and we can, during this 15 minutes, if you want, we can answer questions as well. Okay. So Hare Krishna. See you at 15:15. Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Bol. Hey, Hare Krishna. Welcome back, everyone. Everyone's still there? You can say hello, Hare Krishna. Can you hear me?
Hare Krishna.
Someone, yeah, okay. Hare Bol, everyone. Okay, let's continue. So we're looking now at the nature of bhava. Perhaps someone could read this for us. They can read this here. Direct quote from the Nectar of Devotion.
After the nature of bhava,
I can just about, oh yeah. Carry on, Krishna Gopal.
after the outward appearance.
Your voice is very low. We cannot hear anything. So
Oh, that's not a good thing.
microphone.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Try again.
Okay. After the outward appearance.
No.
Okay.
Can't
No.
hear. Oh, why don't you? Sorry, it's me. I haven't got.
We can
things
hear
in my
you.
ear.
Okay.
Sorry, I hadn't put these things in. Hare Krishna.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now, and I believe that you did say it, and everyone could hear you. So no need to repeat again.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So this is nature of bhava. So it is called something called tat atmaka. That it pervades one's whole life and one's whole psyche and one's whole existence. It's like electricity. You know, when you touch electricity, doesn't it? Can go through the whole body. So it appears like it became kind of. I mean, I know we're on this stage, but apparently I've heard it described. It appears like it becomes there is no separation from the mind and one's feelings, one's whole energy, one's whole mind, body, and psyche is completely saturated with spiritual potency. Yeah, this is its nature. Yeah, it stays within the mind, and the continuation of the ecstasy is called samadhi. So there's an example you may have heard Prabhupada use often is when an iron rod is placed within fire. You heard that example, and then it tames all the same qualities of fire. So to such an extent, the rod seems to become one with the fire. You know, nice example to try and understand more what's being explained here. So that's called tat atmaka. Yeah. Now, Srila Prabhupada describes it as samadhi. The book describes it and calls it tat atmaka. And Prabhupada, for our understanding, describes it as samadhi. Yeah. Prabhupada is just giving he's given a description of what is actual samadhi, and it is actually this tat atmaka, when one's whole existence becomes completely spiritualized. Yeah. So, and by nature, bhava by nature is, I mean, the mood you can understand, sure, appreciate to some degree that its nature is relishable. Ladini, one is relishing Krishna. Yeah? One is relishing Krishna's pastimes. Yeah? And one can actually taste and realize the sweet pastimes of Krishna. Yeah? One's tasting one's transcendentally spiritualized senses. Yeah, one is actually, it's as if at the stage of bhava, it's described like if one is in a cinema. And the stage of bhava is where you're sitting in the cinema and you're seeing a display of the film upon the screen. You're actually seeing it, but you're not in it. But you're seeing it. It's being manifest. The doors, like the curtains, are open, and you've been let into the cinema, and you're seeing within the picture of your very soul within you're actually relishing Krishna's pastime. The stage of prema is where you actually enter into the pastimes. You actually play a role in the pastime, so you enter into the film or whatever. Yeah. The stage of bhava, where you're kind of seeing it, it's manifesting. You're able to relish. Yeah. That's the nature of bhava. Yeah. Now then, there's a question perhaps might be coming up for us here. Achieving bhava. So we'll describe that. Just something in the chat here. Okay. Yeah, a couple of questions came up in the chat there. Interesting, nice questions. You can refer to the chat to see the question and the answer there. So achieving bhava, Rupa Goswami describes that, and therefore Srila Prabhupada as well. So he mentions there's two ways. One's by ardent spiritual practice. That's called our daily activities of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. Let me just change that here now. Typo. By the special mercy, number two, by the special mercy of Krishna or his devotee. Yeah. Now Prabhupada, when he mentions in regards to Rupa Goswami by ardent spiritual practice, Srila Prabhupada interestingly describes it as constantly associating with pure devotees. That's how Prabhupada describes this. Yeah? And it makes perfect sense, because without the association of devotees, one is not going to ardently engage in spiritual life. Yeah? So Prabhupada, interestingly, he describes it as constant association with pure devotees. Then he says the other way is by the special mercy of Krishna or by the mercy of a pure devotee of Krishna. He mentions that on page 132. Yeah. So interesting, Prabhupada, similar, he describes executing the practice of devotional service means the association of pure devotees. Yeah, and here's what Prabhupada says specifically, quote, "It is essential, therefore, that one constantly associate with pure devotees who are engaged morning and evening in chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. In this way, one will get the chance to purify his heart and develop this ecstatic, pure love for Krishna." Now, I'm just going to mention it here. It just comes to mind now, just in case it's not mentioned later on. It might be, but anyway, I mention it here now, is that this one can happen to anyone at any time. Anyone at any time. Krishna can give special mercy. Yeah. Now, we're more concerned with this one. Yeah. That should be more our concern. In other words, we cannot just sit back and wait for this. Krishna can do it, he can do it for anyone, but generally it's going to come through this one. Yeah. So that for us, that's really most relevant for us. And that's why that's the relevant thing. How can we practice, how can our specific practice of Krishna consciousness achieve bhava? That's more relative to us, because that's what we're doing. We are practicing Krishna consciousness. Yeah. Did you follow that? You follow that? So yes, it can come by the special mercy of Krishna or his devotee, even to someone who's not practicing, even to someone who doesn't chant 16 rounds a day. It can come by special mercy. But that's very rare. But generally, the one we're focused on is this one. Yeah. All right. Okay. Now, bhava achieved by practice. Someone could read this for us. Anyone can read it out there?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yes, please.
Bhava achieved by practice. This ecstatic love is prior to pure love of Krishna, because in the next verse, Narada confirms that by the gradual process of hearing from the great sages, he developed love of Godhead. Page 132.
Yeah, and that was an interesting example because his life expresses two of both. One through his spiritual practice. Yeah, as we know, it's mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam that he was associating with what's described as the Bhakti Vedantas during the rainy season. They were staying in his house and his mother was serving him. I think most of you know the story. So he achieved bhava and eventually he achieved prema because of his ardent practice in following their example. Yeah. So this is why, the ecstatic love is prior to the pure love of Krishna, because in the next verse, Narada confirms that by the gradual process of hearing from the great sages, he developed love of Godhead. So he's speaking about the progression from faith and then faith, bhajan, kriya, sadhu sangha, anartha nivritti, nishta, ruchi, shakti, nishta, ruchi, shakti, bhava, and prema. Narada went through these stages. So he did this. Oh, sorry. He did this. Yeah. So that's why that's mentioned here, by achieved by practice. So that's very, very relevant to us. Yeah. So, so in other words, Narada Muni in his practice wasn't specifically attracted to Krishna. He was, in other words, seeing the Bhakti Vedantas, being inspired by them. He was following their example, not because he was specifically attracted to Krishna. It wasn't Raganuga. Interesting example, isn't it? Yeah. So, and interesting that Rupa Goswami gives it, and Rupa Goswami more or less, he's advising, because he's explained in the beginning of the Nectar of Devotion the whole process of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. So that's the safe way to go forward and then internally develop, rather than prematurely taking up the activities of Raganuga Sadhana. Yeah. So basically, and of course we know he got mercy as well of those Bhakti Vedantas. And then the mercy was exhibited in them speaking Krishna Katha and him hearing it from them. Yeah. So in other words, this is highlighting that Vaidhi Bhakti is not something to be made light of. It's the process, specifically for us, for coming to bhava. Yeah? And Prabhupada gives innumerable blessings for devotees, innumerable times in his purports that he describes. If you practice this, sincerely, you practice like this, you practice hearing and chanting. He's encouraging us all the time to follow the angas of bhakti, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu. Serve Krishna. Yeah. You get Prabhupada's, that will invoke Prabhupada's mercy and blessings for achieving higher stages of bhakti. Yeah. So it leads to bhava, and therefore, and someone asked a question, is there a verse that describes the different stages? And I just mentioned that verse. I mentioned the different stages just now. And Rupa Goswami will go on to explain the different stages. Yeah. Okay. Now, Prabhupada explains, quote, this ecstatic love is prior to pure love of Krishna, because in the next verse, Narada confirms that by the gradual process of hearing from great sages, he developed love of Godhead. Right? So someone could, now here's Bhava achieved through Raganuga, which an interesting example is given. So someone could read this one for us.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Haribol.
By Raganuga Sadhana, the quote from Padma Purana is an example of bhava attained through Raganuga Sadhana. In this story, a lady named Chandrakanti saw the deity of Krishna, which aroused her desire to dance with Krishna throughout the night. Thank you.
Yeah, I always find it's an interesting example. Why is it an example? Well, because she developed the desire, or she desired to develop the same sentiments of the gopis. That was her inner mood. And here, yeah, she danced to dance. I think it mentioned also that she danced throughout the night. Anyway, and the main thing is that was her mood. That was her practice. Was her mood was to develop the sentiments of the gopis. So, Chandrakanti, examples given here. Just a note here. By this Raganuga Sadhana, she achieved bhava, evidenced by the fact that she remained dancing all night without wasting a moment on rest. This reluctance to waste time is a symptom of bhava known as a vyakta kala bhavan, which we'll be describing in the next chapter as a symptom of bhava. Okay? So we heard two, achieving bhava through spiritual practice and by the special mercy of Krishna or his devotee. Now, by mercy, let's speak about this one, by special mercy. Vachaka, the first one. Yeah, and here, again, I've already made the point. As I said, I thought I might make this point. I thought I might say it just in case it's not mentioned, but it is mentioned, so I'll say it again. So achieving bhava by mercy is not a common thing. Yeah, and Prabhupada gives the example of someone who expects to complete a college, or expects to complete college not by studying hard, but by getting an honorary degree. It doesn't come very often. It's not so common. Yeah, so I've mentioned that already. But anyway, when it comes to mercy, there are three ways it may be manifest. So vachaka, darshana, hada. So by verbal blessing, blessings through association, by heartfelt unspoken blessing. Yeah. So Prabhupada summarized it simply by speaking, simply by glancing, simply by good wishes. And then there's examples there. First one, vachaka, by a blessing. So just reading here. Now the Purana illustrates the devotee achieving mercy through verbal blessing. Krishna blesses Narada to achieve bhava bhakti. So as I mentioned, Narada shows the example of two ways of achieving ecstatic love or bhava. One through ardent practice, and also here, eventually into prema, where Krishna blessed Narada, just by verbal blessing. May you achieve love. That's it. Lord Chaitanya, if you read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, you see Lord Chaitanya, by his mercy, devotees would experience love of God. Yeah. Darshana, by personal appearance. Quote here from the Skanda Purana. When the inhabitants of the Jangala province saw the personality of Godhead, they were so stricken with feeling that they could not withdraw their glance from him. So this is when Krishna was traveling to and from Dwarka to Vrindavan and engaging in his pastimes, traveling from one city or one town to another. He passed through the Jangala province. Just by seeing him, just by that darshan, they obtained spontaneous attraction and love. They could not withdraw their glance from him. Like a magnet, Yeah, just upon seeing Krishna. So they weren't particularly qualified to see the Lord, but out of his causeless mercy, Krishna gave them his darshan. Yeah. So just by seeing him, they felt bhava. And they couldn't look, from that point on, they couldn't forget Krishna. So then, heartfelt blessings. I just read this. This is from, I think it's come from Damodar Swami. Quote here: Krishna or his devotees may bestow heartfelt blessings. Sukha Samhita illustrates heartfelt blessings from Krishna. Yes. While still within the womb of his mother, Sukadeva Goswami achieved bhava. Pretty good, isn't it? Achieve bhava before you're born. By the blessings, heartfelt blessings of Krishna. Since he had not yet come out of the womb to see or hear the Lord, one can surmise that he attained his perfection by the Lord's heartfelt blessing. So it can come that way as well. Yeah. And this chapter finishes with two examples of achieving bhava by heartfelt good wishes of a devotee. The first example is Prahlad Maharaj, who received the good wishes of Narada while he was in the womb. Okay. Another example is Mugari the hunter, who became an exalted devotee simply by the good wishes of Narada Muni. Yeah. So again, it can come, but I just want to illustrate this point. You know, if we're just asking devotees, give me your mercy, and we're not actually ardently practicing. You know, we're not ardently practicing, but we're just asking devotees, give me your mercy. No, it doesn't, you know, that's kind of, we're trying to shortcut. You understand? We're trying to make a shortcut. You know, I'm not going to really practice much. I'm not going to make much of an effort. So give me your mercy, because I don't want to make much effort. You understand? We have to make, you know, because this is what we have to do. Ardently spirit. And then when we ask if we ask devotees for mercy, then it will be real. You know, we cannot cheat Krishna. You know, if we're not even following the regular principles, we're not doing prescribed. If we're not doing this, who are we to ask for this? You understand? Yeah. So this is very important. Is this one? So yeah, Krishna can give mercy to anyone. And please give me your mercy. Go to senior devotees. Please, you know, you may be watching nonsense, doing all other things. But please give me your mercy. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm going on one a bit here. We should always ask for mercy and the blessings of the Vaishnavas. That should always be there, but it shouldn't circumvent ardently practicing with all sincerity what Rupa Goswami has given us in the Nectar of Devotion. Yeah, for instance, the items of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. All right. Any questions on that? If not, we can finish chapter 17 and we can edge into chapter 18. Ready for chapter 18?
Prabhuji, could you say that you can't cheat the devotees in the sense that they can see through you? If you're doing what you're saying, like just trying to shortcut and ask for mercy, they can see past that. They can see your game. Yeah,
by the grace of Krishna, they may be endowed with a certain vision, a certain understanding of you, your persona, and where you are. It doesn't mean that, again, doesn't mean if we're struggling we may be struggling, finding it hard to follow the basics of Krishna consciousness. We should also ask for mercy in order to do that as well. So just keep that in mind. But actually, we shouldn't use that as an in other words, we should be sincere about our devotional practice. Yeah. Did that answer my interview?
Yes, yes, Prabhuji, it did. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to chapter 18. 1 second. Go. Okay, well done. This probably will confirm, we're probably sure to finish next week, so that next week you will complete your Bhakti Shastri study. Well done. You can complete it with hearing about Krishna Prema. There's a wonderful final chapter of your Bhakti Shastri study. But anyway, let's get into chapter 18. Now, chapter 18, I always find very interesting. It's very nice. Well, all the chapters are very nice, but this one is specifically important. So it's going to continue with a description of Bhava Bhakti. So again, ecstatic love means Bhava. So what's the character of one in ecstatic love? And it's important to understand what are the characteristics of one at the stage of Bhava. Now, as we mentioned, the characteristic of Bhava is the heart becomes soft. So it becomes quite sensitive to Krishna conscious or spiritual emotions. Now, as we mentioned, these will manifest. Now, for the most part, devotees will keep these symptoms hidden. Yeah, they will not want to advertise themselves. But the devotees at this stage, there will be reactions, such as crying, as we mentioned, faltering of the voice. Yeah, this is all a manifestation of their heart being touched by Bhava and is softened. Yeah. Now the thing is here is that these symptoms, these external symptoms, can be imitated. Yeah, I think Charlie Guru mentioned nicely when it was the handover of his temple presidency to Boya Mahaprabhu. He mentioned about he was, just letting everyone know that he might shed some tears during. But he made an interesting point that actors, if they can cry at will, then they can get a good acting job because it's not so easy. And the point I'm making here is that these symptoms can be imitated. For instance, actors, they can develop the ability to cry when it's needed, on stage or whatever, in front of the camera. Yeah. So now, so that's one thing. These symptoms can be imitated. Now, another thing, as I mentioned, a devotee may purposely conceal these emotions. Yeah, and generally, they will do that. So their bhava may be undetected. So what's being mentioned in this chapter, that the external symptoms are not sufficient evidence that the devotee has achieved bhava. One, because they can be imitated. Two, because the devotee will hide them. Yeah, the devotee will hide them. Yeah. He or she will not be, will rather hide. If they're exhibiting tears or these ecstatic symptoms, they will feel shy and they will hide the symptoms. Unless it's like Prabhupada, sometimes these symptoms become involuntary. They cannot be hidden. That's when they're very strong. And Prabhupada showed that only a few times. He did show it. And only devotees will explain when he was chanting Jaya Radha Madhav. Prabhupada would sometimes become stunned in ecstasy and lose touch with the material world completely. Then he would come out of that ecstasy. But generally, Prabhupada would keep his ecstatic symptoms in check in order to set the right example for his devotees. And just read from here. There you see in chapter 18, Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur has very critically discussed all these bhava displays, these artificial displays, in connection with some unscrupulous neophytes imitating these symptoms Why? For cheap appreciation. Not only Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, but also Rupa Goswami treated them very critically. Sometimes all the above 8 symptoms of ecstasy are imitated by the Prakrita Sahajiyas, or otherwise known as mundane devotees. So this is what this chapter is about. Yeah. Now, how can we tell them? So real steady bhava is displayed. You can, so how can we tell that someone has really attained the stage of bhava? Well, Rupa Goswami tells us how. And these symptoms, which we will list and describe, might not finish it today, they will be manifest 24 hours a day, and they cannot be hidden. Right? So this is an interesting aspect of our study on the stage of bhava. Now I'm just going to give them here. Here they are. So Rupa Goswami gives 9 reliable symptoms, yeah, that a person has achieved genuine bhava. Yeah, as I mentioned, these cannot be concealed, and as I mentioned, they are they're not. Yeah, they're just there as part of a devotee's persona, 24 hours a day, and now we will have a slide on each one of these, but for now I just go over them. I just mention the name of them, and then we'll speak a little something on each one, because that's what Rupa Goswami does. He elaborates on each one, giving evidences. So first one is utilization of time, perseverance, detachment, pridelessness, hope against hope, intense eagerness, constant attraction to chanting, addiction to glorifying Krishna's qualities, love for living in the Lord's Dharma. Now, as we're going through these, I would like you to think of our respective advanced senior devotees, say in our particular movement, and you will quite clearly see these symptoms manifest in our respective spiritual masters in our senior devotees in our movement. Yeah. So for instance, let's begin with the first one. Let's have different devotees can read. So anyone like to read this one? Avyakta Kala Van.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yeah.
Utilization of time. An unalloyed devotee who has developed ecstatic love for Krishna is always engaging his words in reciting prayers to the Lord. Within the mind, he is always thinking of Krishna, and with his body, he either offers obeisances to bowing down before the deity or engages in some other service. During these ecstatic activities, he sometimes sheds tears. In this way, his whole life is engaged in the service of the Lord, with not a moment wasted on any other engagement.
All right. Now, let's say, for example, again, as you mentioned, these symptoms of bhava, external symptoms of shivering or tears coming from the eyes, can be imitated by prakrita sahajis or mundane persons. Yeah. So, for instance, someone in Bengal, there's a tradition of there's a sahaja tradition where persons will sing bhajan, and they will recite Krishna Leela, and they will start crying and sometimes roll on the ground. And then the mothers, the others in the audience may start crying. You know, the bhajans are normally like, you get the idea. You've been to India. I've been to some of you hear bhajans like that. And tears start coming, and they start going ecstasy, and everyone, the whole thing. It can be quite, if you're in there, if you're close to them and you associate, the mood is quite infective, and you can also start getting these emotions. Yeah, I mean, like, emotions can affect people, even if it's, say, artificial devotion. It can have effect. Yeah, but then, you know, the persons are doing this, then like the next day, you know, they're watching India versus England cricket. Or you know, or the next day they're playing shuffleboard, you know, or they're smoking biddies, or they're reading the Indian Times, or the, you know, their whole life. In other words, here, this is mutilation of time. I mean, such devotees at the stage of Bhava, they're not, you know, they don't watch the cricket. They're not smoking, they're not addicted to pan, they're not addicted, you know, they're not smoking biddies, you know, they're not wasting time. Yeah. So here's one way to tell, okay, if it is ecstatic, if it's a real thing, you know. If there's any questions or anything to add, you can please do. Again, keep in mind an example of devotees in our ISKCON society. On the positive side. Okay, next one. Perseverance. Someone could read this one. Yeah, this is Raganuga reading. I'm asking you to spontaneously come forward and read. I'm not calling on names. So this is
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, please go ahead. Yeah.
My dear Brahmanas, you should always accept me as your surrendered servant. I have come to the bank of the Ganges just to devote my heart and soul unto the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. So please bless me that the Mother Ganges may also be pleased with me. Let the curse of the Brahmana's son fall upon me. I do not mind. I only request that at the last moment of my life, all of you will kindly chant the holy name of Vishnu so that I may realize his transcendental qualities.
Yeah, so who is speaking here?
Is it Parikshit Maharaj?
Yes, this is King Parikshit Maharaj. So Parikshit, this example is a wonderful verse, my Maharaj Parikshit. So he's not disturbed. Yeah, he just wants to hear about Krishna. Yeah, he's not disturbed in the presence of various causes of disturbance. So he's perseverant. He's just fixed his mind upon Krishna. Yeah, you know, we might be disturbed. You know, say from. Anyway, we don't want to. Perhaps not such a good example, but say if you get information that a hitman's going to kill you in 7 days, you know, and he's never fails in his mission and his job. You're going to die in 7 days. All right, it might not be a snake bird. It might be someone with guns going to kill you in 7 days. You know, they've been paid to kill you. You know, how, you know, would we be disturbed? Yeah, we might be disturbed. You know, we sit there. Okay, let me just hear and chant about Krishna. Anyway, get the idea. So devotee is perseverant. So despite the different, despite the presence of disturbance, devotee is just fixed. And there's some we see as senior devotees have to face so many different problems and different trying situations, so many reverses that can happen, so many disappointments, but they continue. They just continue guiding devotees. They continue inspiring devotees. They're perseverant, like Maharaj Parikshit, continue his devotional attraction and hearing about Krishna. All right, let's read another one. Detachment. So again, someone can read for us.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, please go ahead.
Detachment. Emperor Bharata was so attracted by the beauty of the lotus feet of Krishna that even in his youthful life, he gave up all kinds of attachment to family, children, friends, kingdom, etc., as though they were untouchable stools.
Yeah, it's quite a graphic example. Yeah. You know, I'm sorry, I'm getting a bit graphic as well. It isn't like when we're in the toilet, when we use the toilet, we're feeling separation. Hey, just walk out the toilet and you don't give it a second thought, isn't it? So that was Maharaj Bharata. Such detachment. Of course, other things happen in his life, you know, that's another story, you know. But as far, and he was quite, you know, he wasn't as if he was in his 70s, in his 80s, and it was time to retire. No, he was a young man. How old? It's not given exactly, but he was a young emperor who ruled the whole planet, you know, and had unlimited wealth. He just completely detached, just walked out. And examples given this of some of our spiritual masters and sannyasis, like Tamal Krishna Maharaj, was married before, mothers, and just completely left that situation. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is another example of this. Had such a loving mother in the form of Mother Sachi, and his wife as well, such a loving, devoted wife, but for the sake of the mission of spreading love of God, he just left. You know, so detachment. This is one. Yeah. Here, I'll just read this here. Prabhupada does elaborate a little bit here. It does not mean artificially keeping oneself aloof and apart from the allurements of attachment. Even in the presence of such allurements, one can remain unattracted by material attachment. He is called detached. All right. So even amidst of reasons to be attracted, one is not attracted. So that is detached. That's real detachment. And that's why Grandfather Bhishma, he celebrated as being detached, and he made this terrible vow that I will not marry in order to start funding this. Okay, it was, you know, it's if a sadhu in a forest says I will not marry, okay, all right, he's not in a palace. Here, Maharaj Bhishma was living in a palace, living with thousands of probably beautiful, no doubt, princesses. He was moving in high-class society, surrounded by beautiful women. Yeah, but he took that vow, and he moved easily in that situation without being agitated at all. Yeah, so real detachment. Yeah. All right, let's read another one. Pridelessness. Yeah, someone could read. Yes, go ahead. Sure. Thank you.
Pridelessness. When a devotee, in spite of possessing all the qualities of pure realization, is not proud of his position, he is called prideless. In the Padma Purana, it is stated that King Bharata was the emperor above all other kings, yet he developed such ecstatic love for Krishna that he became a mendicant and went out begging even to the homes of his political enemies and untouchables. He was so humble that he respectfully bowed down before them. Thank you.
Okay. I think we touched on this a little bit before. So now this is the real manifestation of humility as a consequence or symptom of bhava. Yeah. Before that, we should practice humility, but humility will come as well as a natural manifestation of advancement in Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada gives a nice example as well, a personal experience that he knew of. And he mentions there, you can read it in the Nectar of Devotion. He mentions even very recently, about 200 years ago or less, there was a landlord, a big landlord known as Lal Babu. He was a big, this was in Kolkata. He owned much land. He was very well known. Then he became a devotee, and he left it all, left all his properties, left everything, and went to live in Vrindavan. Yeah, and also because he was a landholder, he was also had some influence in the political field. He was also moving in that area as well of politics. So he's a big person in Kolkata, Lal Babu. But then he became a Vaishnava and went to Vrindavan. And for his subsistence, because he literally left everything. So he had nothing. He had no money, he had no bank account, nothing. So in order for his basic subsistence, he had to beg door to door. Yeah. And even he went to the homes of his otherwise, or the enemies he had made in the political sphere platform. And he'd knock on their door as a beggar, begging for alms. You know, so the Prabhupada gives that as a contemporary, say 200 years compared to the time of Rupa Goswami, of pridelessness, the great humility to do something like that. That's humility. Because Prabhupada mentioned begging involves being ready to be insulted by persons to whom you beg. Yeah. So anyway, book distribution is a good lesson for that. Those of you who've done book distribution, it's very good. You may have all good intention for giving someone something that will benefit them, and they may spit at you, they may curse you in many different ways. Yeah, it's a good opportunity to develop. Chunadic peace in it, you know. Yeah. All right, should we read another one? Yes, let's read another one. Hare Krishna. Great hope, Aisha Banda. Yeah. Someone could read this one.
The strong conviction that one will certainly receive the favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is called in Sanskrit Ashabandhu. Ashabandhu means to continue to think. Because I'm trying my best to follow the routine principles of devotional service, I'm sure that I will go back to Godhead, back to home.
Yeah. So this is, you will see, you will recognize this mood in the prayers of Narottam Das Thakur. I think I mentioned before as well, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, this great hope against hope. Yeah, the devotees are this great hope despite my condition. Or how can I get the mercy of he who gave mercy to the she-demon Putana, although she smeared her breast with deadly poison? Yeah, she was given the position of mother. I think Uddhava goes into great ecstasy upon, and he recites this verse. How can I get the great hope of that mercy? He gave mercy to Putana, tried to kill him. You get the idea of the mood. What to speak of me? This is the Bhava mood, a really intense mood. So there's a wonderful prayer which by Rupa Goswami himself, which I just read here. It's very nice, which exemplifies this mood very, very nicely. He says, I have no love for Krishna, nor for the causes of developing love of Krishna, namely hearing and chanting. And the process of bhakti yoga, by which one is always thinking of Krishna and fixing his lotus feet in the heart, is also lacking in me. As far as philosophical knowledge of pious works are concerned, I don't see any opportunity for me to execute such activities. Above all, I am not even born in a nice family. Therefore, I must simply pray to you, Gopi Chana Vallabha. I simply wish and hope that some way or other I may be able to approach your lotus feet. And this hope is giving me pain because I think myself quite incompetent to approach you, to approach that transcendental goal of life. Yeah? This Asha Bandha, great hope. Now, we also as sadhakas, we can also kind of have this mood. We should be hoping for Krishna's mercy. But it really manifests at the stage of, at this stage, or the stage of bhava, yeah, where it's really deep and it's really intense. It's great hope. But we can also have, we can learn from this, and we should hope for Krishna's mercy as well. Now, it won't be to the same depth as the stage of bhava, but still, we should be developing this mood of Vripalamba, That's the mood that we chant Krishna's holy name. And we should meditate on this with the lumbar. Try to endeavor to develop this mood of practicing Krishna consciousness, the mood of separation. Now, it will, in its true sense, it's shown by the Bhava Bhakta. Yeah, that's why it's called Asha Bandha. Yeah. Any questions on this? Or any comments you can please ask or share? With great hope. Yes, strong conviction. We will achieve the favor of the Lord. So, okay, next one. This one's similar. Samukanta, this one. Someone could read this.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I can do it again.
Yes, please. Yes.
When one is sufficiently eager to achieve success in devotional service, that eagerness is called samutkanta. This means complete eagerness. Actually, this eagerness is the price for achieving success in Krishna consciousness. Everything has some value, and one has to pay the value before obtaining or possessing it.
Yeah, so I think we could also, this is also described as lobha, eagerness. Yeah. And here's a verse from Bilvamangala Thakur from his Krishna Karnamrita. He says, I'm eagerly waiting to see that boy of Vrindavan whose bodily beauty is captivating the whole universe, whose eyes are always bounded by black eyebrows and expanded like lotus petals, and who is always eagerly glancing over his devotees and therefore moving slightly here and there. His eyes are always moist, his lips are colored like copper, and through those lips there comes a sound vibration which drives one madder than a mad elephant. I want so much to see him in Vrindavan. Yeah. Again, you should, it's good, that's why it's good for us to study, because when we study these symptoms of bhava, and we're from, we study it and we read about it, you can see when the advanced senior devotees are speaking and the way they express themselves, you can be able to see these actual moods, especially this one as well. Someone could read this one. Namo Ruchi. Anyone can read. You can read twice if you want.
In the same Krishna Karnamrita, there is another statement about the chanting of Radharani. It is said by one of the associates of Radharani, O Lord Govinda, the girl who is the daughter of King Vrishabhanu is now shedding tears, and she is anxiously chanting your holy name. Krishna, Krishna!
Krishna, Krishna, yes. So who can exhibit to such a degree as Radharani? But let's just think about respect again, the advanced devotees in our movement. How much attracted are they to the holy name? Right? How much attraction does Mahavishnu Maharaj have for the holy name? It's completely, so much, such a greed, such a joy. He's so ecstatically attached to the holy name. And does Kadambakana Maharaj like chanting the holy name? Yeah, he's completely addicted to bhajan and chanting the holy name, and respectively, and Lokanath Maharaj, different, you can see that's their life. And Govinda Maharaj, so many devotees, there's so much attachment to the holy name of the Lord. It's bhava. Okay, let's read another one. Yes, another one. Someone could read this one.
I would like to read.
Please, yes, go ahead. Yes.
Eagerness to describe the Lord's qualities. Attachment for chanting the glories of the Lord is also expressed in the Krishna Karnamrita as follows. What shall I do for Krishna, who is pleasing beyond all pleasurable conceptions, and who is naughtier than all restless boys? The idea of Krishna's beautiful activities is attracting my heart, and I do not know what I can do.
Yeah, okay. I'm just thinking at the moment that lately I'm listening to some of you might be also to Indradyumna Swami Maharaj, who's reciting different pastimes of Krishna based on his having access to the Vrindavan Institute in Vrindavan and the translation. Anyway, Krishna's pastimes, and he's got so much. He's such relishing so much. You can tell he's relishing. For him, it's like nectar. And he's describing the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. You can see it. This is a stage of ruchi, minimal ruchi, the stage of bhava. He loves speaking about Krishna, and Krishna's qualities. Yeah. So eagerness to describe those qualities. And then this one, the last of these 9. Someone could read this one.
Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, please.
Attraction to living in a place where Krishna enacts his pastimes. In the book Padyavati by Rupa Goswami, there is the following statement about Vrindavan. In this place, the son of Maharaj Nanda used to live with his father, who was the king of all cowherd men. In this place, Lord Krishna broke the cart in which the Shakatashura demon was concealed. At this place, Damodara, who can cut the knot of our material existence, was tied up by his mother Yashoda.
Okay. So again, you see as an example, you see, I've seen over the years, I've observed that as senior devotees have developed such attraction for the holy Dharma. Again, if I don't mind me using the example of Indradyumna Swami, is very much attached to Vrindavan, and our senior devotees have touched Jabhataka Maharaj. I mean, how attached is he to Navadvip? You can see that. So this will be a natural attraction at the stage of bhava. Then such devotees will, even they will establish the holy Dharma in specific places where they're preaching. Yeah, and so it plays a big role. Again, it's a symptom of bhava. Okay. Any questions on these? We're all clear why these 9 are being brought up. These 9 are reliable symptoms. That's why it's the 9 reliable symptoms. And these are there again 24 hours a day. Yeah. These 9 symptoms. All right. Now is there any questions on that?
One question, Prabhu, towards the end is speaking
Please,
about Damodashtikam and Damodar. And I think in the earlier chapters as well, Prabhupada gives a lot of emphasis to the month of Kartik. I mean, I was just going to ask you, like, it makes sense, but why is that?
Well, that's the false stuti that's actually given. You know, there's certain benedictions that are given by Krishna, and the month of Damodar is also presided over by Radharani. So for devotees who are engaged, or like sadhakas who are engaged in the process of Shravana Kirtanam Vishnu, they are getting superlative, wonderful benefit. So Kartik is also, in one sense, it's also there to entice and attract persons who are otherwise completely engrossed in their material activities to actually offer a lamp to Krishna. Yeah, I mean, we offer lamps to Krishna every day. But specifically in Kartik, a special discompensation is given, and special bhakti points or bhakti piety is actually given to do some devotional activities in the month of Kartik. Yeah. So it is very significant. It's just, that's why, in order to tempt people to engage, offer something to Krishna, take some vow on Krishna's behalf, is that they may not otherwise be actually doing that. So Kartik, and also for those who are practicing the angas, so those who are sadhakas, who are offering lamps daily to Krishna or watching artis daily to Krishna and taking different personal vows, it's just a good excuse to go deeper, you know, to go further. For those already practicing, yeah, let me do something extra for Krishna. Yeah, let me do a little austerity for Krishna. Let me do this. Let me eat once a day, whatever it may be. Let me not eat sweets in this month. Yeah, it's just devotees are always looking for a good reason to do more for Krishna, to stretch the comfort zone a little bit more. So Kartik, for that, such devotees is also very much appreciated. But also, you know, for those who are otherwise completely engrossed in and busy in their material activities, the benefits of doing something for Krishna is very attractive in this age. Yeah. I know there's one friend of mine, very dear friend of mine, a godbrother of mine, and actually he hasn't been for a couple of years, but the first day of Kartik, he would always come for Mangalati. He wouldn't come for Mangalati any other day, but he'd come on the first day because he knows he gets great benefit. You know? So he comes on the first day. He's very happy to come on that day. You know, so he's cashing in on the benefits to be had. So it's like also we have, you know, not during Prabhupada's time, but now it seems some devotees are quite enthusiastic about Purushottam as well, isn't it? Now we hear it's given, well, it wasn't so much practice in Prabhupada's time, but Purushottam, I know Jagata Maharaj and other senior devotees, they put a lot of emphasis on that. So sometimes it's good, even as devotees, we may, you know, become quite distracted from different from our activities of bhakti. You know, this world is difficult not to be distracted. So the month of Kartik is something that we can refocus and realign our devotional practice. You know, I know in our temple, for example, the month of Kartik, then it's so many people come. Yeah, both the morning and the evening. And these persons wouldn't come if it wasn't Kartik. But Kartik is the extra. It's again, it's just to entice people to take up the act, to like do something more, or to do something, and to do something if they're not doing anything. So that's why, interesting. Prabhupada gave it. Prabhupada made specific emphasis on this, and he asked us to follow it, because our the worshipful deity of Gaudiya Vaishnavas is Radha Krishna, Jugala. Radha Krishna is youthful Radha Krishna. The worship of Bal Gopal is by another, what's known as well, Prabhupada used this word, the Pusti Marg. Yeah, it's not generally Bal Gopal is not our worshipful deity. The worshipful deity of Gaudiya Vaishnavas is Radha Krishna, Jugala Kishore, youthful Radha Krishna. But here in this month we give all attention and focus and worship Bal Gopal, Krishna in the form of in the form of Bhai, in the form of a young baby or a young boy. Yeah? So Prabhupada gave us that and asked us to follow it. So we do, and it helps to enhance our devotional practice very much. Yeah. Anyone, is that okay? My interview?
Thank you so much, Murli.
All right. So what we might do, the time's 3:20, so we finished that section. So let's today we can end there. And next week we'll be beginning the class by speaking about these subjects, ecstatic symptoms in neophytes and non-devotees. We'll be looking at that. Something called reflective attachment, shadow attachment, how those shadow attachments or reflective attachments can transform into genuine bhava. More on what's something called shadow attachment, transforming that into bhava, causeless bhava, apparently, and attitude towards faults in devotees who are at the stage of bhava. Yeah, interesting one. Yeah, what should be the attitude towards if they see some fault? Having explained the 9 symptoms here, still, someone may see some fault in the character of a Bhava Bhakta. What should one's attitude be? Right? So we'll describe that next week. And then we're finished with Prema, this chapter 19. It's relatively, interestingly, it's a relatively short chapter. It's an introduction to Prema. It's an introduction to the rest of the Nectar of Devotion. Right? So, okay. So unless there's any final questions, we can stop a few minutes early today. Something come up in the chat. Let's check that. Next week, please, can we go through the exam questions and answers? If we have time, really, it's really up to you and your personal time to actually study the what's it called? The questions. What's it called? The personal. What's it called? Those questions are called personal. It's called personal study, isn't it? What's it called? Yeah.
Self-study.
Yeah.
Self-study.
Yeah. Self-study questions. So I can say if we have time, we can. My main focus next week is to finish. And if we finish before that, then we can go into this. All right. But please, throughout the week, you can, in your own time, study that as well. And if there is specific, perhaps we'll do it like this. If there's specific answers or specific questions and you're unclear of the answer, because the answers to those questions will be very specific to a specific part of the Nectar Devotion. And if you have trouble to identify it, then you can ask it as a question next week. Okay? So let's perhaps do it like that.
Sure, thank you.
All right? Okay, so thank you everyone, and I wish you a
Hare
good
Krishna, Prabhu. I just wanted
please.
to ask, next week, I think it's Diwali and Govardhan Puja. So did we say we're going to have a session, or did we say we're going to miss
I
that?
know, better check. We better check with Padma Manchinenda, our boss, so we'll keep you informed
Yes,
about
Prabhu,
that.
I had the same question because we are celebrating Diwali in the temple and we'll be quite tied up with some
Okay,
of the
so perhaps it
preparation.
looks like it might be the week after. So what I do is mention that to Padma Manchinenda, and then he communicate with everyone.
Thank
But
you so
normally
much. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone. I wish you all the best of Krishna Conscious Week and look forward to seeing you next week or the week after.
Thank
Okay?
you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare
Hare
Bol.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna, everyone. Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Hare Bol. Hare Krishna. All right, I'm going to press the red button. And we're all going to disappear. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hare Krishna. End meeting.